Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're on Season 19, Killer Pairs, where we're going to cover people who work together to murder. It could be family members, people involved in relationships, or just a couple of friends out doing some murdering. If you're entertained by these videos, hit like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. You can also check out my other channel, Somewhere Sinister, that's a little more history related. There's links in the description. Over the course of 1 month in 2007, the Dnepropetrovsk province was shocked by a horrific killing spree. 2 young men, sometimes accompanied by a third, were brutally attacking people at random. It only got worse when it was discovered that the Maniacs had also recorded some of the killings. This is Monsters. Viktor Sayenko and Igor Suprunyuk, born in 1988, grew up in the Dnepropetrovsk region of Ukraine. Despite coming from wealthy and influential families, their early years were marked by timidity and experiences of being bullied as classmates. That background set the stage for the development of their twisted worldview and eventually descent into criminality. Viktor would later reveal during questioning, quote, "Me and Igor were both afraid of heights, and we were afraid we'd be beaten up by bullies." In an attempt to overcome the phobia, they engaged in risky behaviors such as standing on the balcony railing of their 14th floor apartment for extended periods. The formation of the group that would later become known as the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs began when Viktor and Igor were around 14 years old. They found common ground with a third individual, Alexander Hanza, who shared similar fears and insecurities. Alexander, described as the most squeamish of the trio, had a pronounced fear of blood that would play a significant role in the group's early activities. Igor, who emerged as a dominant force within the group, suggested a disturbing method to confront their fears: torturing stray dogs. That cruel practice became a regular activity for the boys, who captured dogs in a wooded area near their homes, subjected them to brutal acts of violence, and documented their actions through photographs. Those images, later used as evidence by the prosecution, depicted the teenagers posing next to the mutilated corpses of animals, drawing swastikas and other symbols with animal blood, and even giving Nazi salutes. The group's fascination with Nazi imagery and symbolism was particularly evident in Igor's behavior. Born on April 20th, the same date as Adolf Hitler, Igor often referenced that coincidence and was photographed sporting a toothbrush mustache reminiscent of the infamous dictator. That disturbing fixation on Nazi ideology would continue to influence their actions in the years to come. As the trio transitioned into adulthood, their paths diverged slightly but remained intertwined through their criminal activities. Alexander moved between various jobs, including stints as a pastry chef and a construction worker, while Viktor pursued part-time studies at a metallurgy institute and worked as a security guard. Igor, officially unemployed, began operating an unlicensed taxi service using a green Daewoo Lanos. It was through Igor's unofficial taxi business that the group's criminal activities escalated. With the assistance of Viktor and Alexander, Igor began targeting his passengers for robbery. That marked a significant shift in their behavior, moving from animal cruelty to crimes against humans. The green Daewoo, often described with a taxicab's checkerboard marking, would later become a crucial element in the investigation of their more heinous crimes. The group's criminal activities took a more serious turn on March 1, 2007, when Alexander committed 2 armed robberies. That event would later result in separate charges against him. However, it was Viktor and Igor who would take their criminal behavior to unimaginable extremes. As their confidence grew and their moral boundaries eroded, the pair apparently lost interest in mere robbery. They made the chilling decision to escalate their crimes to murder, targeting random individuals for the sheer thrill of taking a life. That would mark the beginning of a reign of terror that would grip the city of Dnepropetrovsk and shock the world. Viktor and Igor embarked on their horrifying killing spree in the summer of 2007. Their reign of terror began on June 25th when they claimed their first victim, 33-year-old Ekaterina Elchenko. As she walked home after having tea with a friend, the unsuspecting woman was struck in the head with a hammer. In a cruel twist of fate, her own mother discovered her mutilated body. Just a few hours later, the maniacs targeted Roman Tatarovich, who was sleeping on a park bench. They bludgeoned him with such force that his face became unrecognizable. The attack took place in front of a prosecutor's office, adding a chilling layer of audacity to the crimes. The killing spree continued relentlessly. On July 1st, 2 more victims, Evgenia Grushenko and Nikolai Surchuk, were found murdered in Novomoskovsk, Russia, northeast of Dnepropetrovsk. 5 days later, 3 more people fell victim to the maniacs in Dnepropetrovsk, including a recently discharged army recruit. By then, authorities were desperate to stop the killers due to the sheer brutality of their attacks. Their weapon of choice was often a hammer, which they used to bludgeon their victims mercilessly. In some cases, they also used screwdrivers to inflict further harm. The attacks were characterized by extreme violence, with many victims left unrecognizable due to the severity of their injuries. One of the most disturbing aspects of their crimes was their tendency to document their atrocities. They recorded videos of their murders, one of which leaked onto the internet and became known as 3 Guys, 1 Hammer. That video depicted the gruesome murder of 48-year-old Sergei Yatsenko, showcasing the killer's complete lack of empathy and their apparent enjoyment of the act. Sergei had survived a car accident and been diagnosed with a cancerous tumor, but he hadn't given up. Released from his job after his cancer diagnosis, he continued to work odd jobs and took care of his family, including his disabled mother. At about 2:30 p.m. on July 12, 2007, Sergei called his wife and said he was going to visit his grandson, but he never made it to his destination. His body was found 4 days later. The killers had used a cell phone to record his brutal murder, torturing him and then repeatedly hitting him in the head with a hammer. Igor was in the video with the hammer, and it was determined that Viktor was behind the camera. The maniacs didn't limit themselves to murder. They also engaged in other disturbing behaviors, such as attending their victims' funerals and posing disrespectfully near coffins and gravestones. Those actions further highlighted the depth of their depravity. Another concerning aspect of the murders was that they targeted a wide range of victims, seemingly choosing them at random. However, many of their victims were particularly vulnerable individuals. The elderly, disabled people, and women were often targeted, as were those who couldn't put up much of a fight. One of their victims was a pregnant woman from whom they horrifyingly cut out the fetus. Another was an elderly woman named Lydia, who miraculously survived the hammer attack when the killers were scared away by barking dogs. The randomness of the attack sent waves of panic through the community. No one felt safe as the killers struck indiscriminately, attacking people who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their victims included people out for walks, those sleeping on benches, and individuals returning home from social outings. In total, the Dnepropetrovsk maniacs were charged with involvement in 29 separate crimes, including 21 murders and 8 attacks where the victims survived. The brutality of their acts combined with the seemingly senseless nature of their victim selection made the killing spree one of the most shocking in Ukraine's criminal history. As the body count rose, a task force was swiftly dispatched from Kiev, led by Chief Criminal Investigator Vasily Paskalov. The manhunt rapidly expanded to include most local law enforcement, with reports suggesting that over 2,000 investigators were assigned to the case. Initially, the investigation was shrouded in secrecy. Authorities withheld official information about the murders from the public, and local residents were not warned about potential attacks or provided with descriptions of the suspects. Despite the lack of official warnings, rumors of the attacks spread quickly, causing most of the local population to remain indoors after nightfall. The atmosphere of fear and uncertainty gripped the city as residents grappled with the knowledge that a pair of ruthless killers was on the loose. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement began to make strategic moves to gather information. They selectively distributed sketches of the suspects and lists of stolen property to local pawn shops. That decision proved crucial as stolen items soon began to surface in pawn shops located in the city's Novokodavsky district. On July 23, 2007, law enforcement finally closed in on the suspects when the killers attempted to sell a mobile phone stolen from a victim at a pawn shop. The shop owner, recognizing the phone from police reports, immediately alerted the authorities. That single act of vigilance set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the capture of the killers. Viktor Sayenko and Igor Suprunyuk were apprehended near the cash register of the pawn shop. In a swift operation, authorities also raided Alexander Hans's home and arrested him. However, Alexander managed to flush several stolen mobile phones down the toilet before his capture. Although the phones were later recovered, all the information stored on them was irretrievably lost. The arrests marked the end of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs' reign of terror. Law enforcement recovered damning evidence, including blood stains on the suspects' clothing and video recordings of the murders. Those videos provided chilling proof of the killers' complete lack of remorse and their apparent enjoyment of their brutal acts. Following their arrests, all three suspects initially confessed to their crimes. However, Igor later retracted his confession. Igor faced 21 counts of capital murder, 8 counts of armed robbery, and 1 count of animal cruelty. Viktor was charged with 18 murders, 5 robberies, and 1 count of animal cruelty. Alexander, while not directly involved in the murders, was charged with 2 counts of armed robbery stemming from the incident earlier that year. The capture of Igor and Viktor brought a sense of relief to the terrorized community. The subsequent trial, which began in June of 2008, would reveal the full extent of their crimes and bring closure to the families of their victims. Viktor petitioned the court to allow his father to represent him after he learned that his court-appointed lawyer had only graduated from law school 2 months earlier. The judge approved the request. The defense for Igor claimed that the defendants weren't the people in the video, even claiming that the real killers were powerful and were setting them up. The defense for Viktor placed all the blame on Igor and said that he had threatened Viktor and the defendant feared for his life. Their defenses failed and both Igor and Viktor were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Alexander was convicted and sentenced to 9 years for his crimes. Between December 2010 and April of 2011, a pair of copycats committed 6 murders and injured 9 others in Russia. Nikita Lincoln and Artyom Anafriv began their crime spree wanting to copy other well-known serial killers. They beat their victims with hammers just like Igor and Viktor. They were caught on April 5th and convicted of murder and robbery. It's unknown what would make 2 young men decide to beat random people to death with a hammer, even recording themselves committing the crimes. They seem to have no concern for human life or of getting caught as they brazenly attacked people at random. The human mind is complex and may never be fully understood, but it's safe to say that Igor and Viktor were both monsters. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave us a comment. You can check out our other show, Somewhere Sinister, on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.